My name is Jonathan, and for as long as I can remember, I believed that love was an unshakable sanctuary built on trust, respect, and shared dreams. I married Catherine when we were young and full of hope, convinced that together we would weather every storm. Our early years were filled with laughter, long conversations about the future, and a genuine sense of unity. I had no inkling that beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect life, hidden fissures were slowly forming fissures that would ultimately shatter my world. Catherine had always been admired for her grace and strength. To friends and family, she was the epitome of dedication, a loving wife, a devoted friend, and a pillar in our community. I cherished her warmth, her unwavering support, and the way she made every ordinary moment feel extraordinary. Yet, as time passed, I began to notice subtle changes that I initially dismissed as the natural ebb and flow of married life. Small shifts in her mood, moments when her eyes seemed distant, and a sudden need for solitude started to cast a shadow on our once radiant bond. About a year ago, during a particularly turbulent period in our lives, Catherine confided that she was struggling with inner conflicts and unresolved pain from her past. She decided to seek professional help and began attending sessions with Dr. Gregory Adams, a respected psychologist known for his empathetic and gentle approach. I supported her decision wholeheartedly, believing that therapy was a courageous step toward healing. I trusted that, with time, these sessions would help her confront her demons and bring us even closer together. In the early days, her visits seemed to restore a sense of balance. Catherine spoke about exploring long-buried memories and understanding her own feelings more deeply. However, as the months progressed, I began noticing a disconcerting pattern. Our conversations grew shorter and more guarded. There were evenings when she would sit silently by the window, lost in thought, her expression unreadable. I found her increasingly absorbed in private moments, retreating into herself in ways I had never seen before. It wasn't just the therapy that caused my growing unease. There were other signs, the way she clutched her phone close, the secretive smiles when I wasn't looking, and her sudden absences during dinner when she'd say she needed some me time. I tried to convince myself that these were simply the side effects of emotional healing. But deep inside, I felt that something was amiss, a feeling I could neither ignore nor explain. One rainy evening, while I was sitting in our living room with a book in hand, the steady tapping of raindrops against the window became the soundtrack to my swirling thoughts. I recalled the way Catherine's voice sometimes faltered when speaking about her therapy sessions, the way her eyes darted away when I asked for details. Then, as if fate had decided to deliver the final blow, I found myself staring at her tablet, left unlocked on the coffee table after she had stepped out for a brief errand. Curiosity warred with trepidation as I scrolled through a series of messages. At first glance, they appeared to be the mundane exchanges one might expect between a patient and her psychologist. Yet, as I read on, I noticed that these messages were laced with tenderness and a familiarity that went far beyond professional courtesy. Words of longing, inside jokes, and emotional confessions filled the screen. The messages were signed Gregory, a name that should have represented only the caring professional I trusted to help Catherine heal. Instead, they revealed an intimacy that should have never existed. My heart pounded as I realized that behind the veneer of therapeutic support lay an affair, a secret relationship that had been unfolding right under my nose. The betrayal was not a sudden, violent rupture, but rather a slow, corrosive erosion of trust. The comforting Catherine I knew was entangled in a web of deceit, and I was left grappling with the crushing realization that everything I had believed in was built on a lie. In that moment, as the rain continued its somber symphony outside, I sat paralyzed by shock and disbelief. The messages illuminated a hidden truth. The woman I loved had found solace, validation, and forbidden passion in the arms of someone I had never imagined. My mind reeled, trying to piece together every subtle hint that I had dismissed as mere eccentricities. The feeling of betrayal was overwhelming, and with each passing minute, I felt more isolated in a home that had once been a refuge of love. That night, sleep eluded me as I lay in our cold, dimly lit bedroom. My thoughts churned endlessly, a painful montage of memories, whispered reassurances, and the ever-present knowledge of deception. I knew that the road ahead would be steeped in heartache and hard truths, but I also understood that ignoring the evidence would only prolong my suffering. The foundation of trust that had once been the bedrock of our marriage was now in ruins, and I was forced to confront a future where everything had changed. The days following my discovery were a blur of disbelief and mounting dread. Every smile, every casual remark from Catherine seemed now to be a carefully constructed mask hiding her true feelings. I found myself retracing every conversation, every seemingly insignificant gesture, desperately searching for clues I had once overlooked. The realization that my wife had built a secret world with Dr. Adams, the man I had trusted, was an unbearable weight pressing down on my soul. At first, I attempted to maintain the facade of normalcy. I would greet her in the morning, force a smile during dinner, and ask about her day as if nothing were wrong. But the more I tried to cling to the life we had known, the more the truth loomed large. The silence between us grew palpable, a thick, suffocating barrier that neither of us dared to breach. I began noticing even more signs, the way her phone would vibrate late at night and then be hurriedly silenced when I approached, the furtive glances she cast in my direction, and the subtle changes in her tone when discussing her therapy. I soon discovered additional evidence. One afternoon, while searching for a misplaced notebook in the living room, I stumbled upon a receipt tucked behind a stack of papers. It was from an upscale restaurant I had never heard Catherine mention, a place known for its exclusivity and fine dining. The date on the receipt matched one of her therapy appointments, and my blood ran cold as I realized that it wasn't a casual outing between a patient and a therapist. It was something far more deliberate, far more personal. The mounting clues left me with an insatiable need for answers. My mind was a storm of emotions, confusion, anger, and sorrow all colliding in a turbulent mess. I confronted myself in the mirror every morning, wondering where I had gone wrong and why I had failed to notice the signs. The betrayal wasn't just about the affair. It was a profound fracture in the trust one had invested so completely in our relationship. Late one evening, I decided to confront the evidence head-on. I opened the tablet again, scrolling through the messages with trembling fingers. Each new message painted a clearer picture of a relationship that was both emotional and illicit. The texts were not merely the sterile confirmations of appointments. They were rich with intimacy, confessions of desires, and dreams that now belonged to someone else. Every word stung like a shard of broken glass, and I felt as if I were watching a life unravel before my eyes. The torment of hidden betrayal was compounded by the irony that the very person meant to help heal our wounds had become the source of my deepest pain. Dr. Adams, the trusted psychologist, had crossed the professional boundary to become a secret lover, a fact that shattered the sanctity of both the therapeutic space and our marriage. I felt betrayed not only by Catherine, but also by the institution I had once believed could help mend the broken parts of the human soul. In those agonizing days, I became a silent observer in my own life, watching as the woman I loved grew ever more distant. Our once shared dreams now lay in ruins, replaced by a cold reality of deception. Every passing moment was a reminder of the trust one had so carelessly lost. I began questioning my own worth, wondering if I had been too naive, too blind to the subtleties of human frailty. Was I the only one who failed to see the cracks forming beneath our perfect facade? Friends tried to reach out, offering platitudes and advice, but their words fell on deaf ears. How could I explain that the foundation of my life had been infiltrated by betrayal so deep that it threatened to dismantle everything I had ever known? I sank deeper into isolation, the weight of the secret crushing any hope of reclaiming the happiness we once shared. Every room in our house echoed with memories of laughter and love, now tainted by the bitter knowledge of deception. As the days bled into weeks, the inevitable confrontation loomed on the horizon. I knew that silence would no longer be an option. The storm of emotions inside me demanded release, a catharsis that could only come from facing Catherine and demanding the truth. But even as I steeled myself for that moment, a part of me trembled at the thought of shattering what remained of our fragile connection. I spent countless nights pacing our empty living room, trying to muster the courage to speak, to demand answers that might never satisfy the aching void in my heart. The betrayal was a wound that festered in silence, and with every unspoken word, the chasm between us widened. I was left with a painful question. Could our marriage ever survive such a profound violation of trust? The answer remained shrouded in uncertainty as I prepared for the moment when the truth, however painful, would have to be confronted. The day of reckoning arrived on a bleak winter afternoon. The chill in the air seemed to mirror the cold void that had taken residence in my heart. I had spent endless nights haunted by the evidence of betrayal, each memory a dagger twisting in my chest. I knew that avoiding the truth any longer was impossible. The time had come to confront Catherine, and in doing so, to confront the reality of our shattered lives. I found her in the study, a place we had once shared in comfort and intimacy. The room was filled with a tense silence that neither of us could break. I took a deep breath, my voice trembling as I finally said, "Catherine, we need to talk." Her eyes met mine, wide with shock and a sorrow that spoke of secrets too painful to confess. In that charged moment, everything we had built together seemed to crumble. "Jonathan," she began, her voice barely audible, laden with regret and fear. "I never meant for you to find out this way." Her words sent a shockwave through me, each syllable a reminder of the betrayal that had festered in the shadows of our marriage. I demanded answers, an explanation for the clandestine messages, the secret meetings, and the growing distance between us. The confrontation was raw, unfiltered, and filled with an intensity that neither of us had ever experienced before. Tears welled in Catherine's eyes as she confessed. She admitted that her sessions with Dr. Adams had gradually morphed from a therapeutic relationship into something far more personal, far more dangerous. What had started as a quest for healing had evolved into an emotional entanglement that offered her comfort in ways I could no longer provide. She described feeling trapped by unresolved pain, lured by the promise of understanding and acceptance in the arms of someone who should never have been more than a professional guide. In that moment, every word she spoke echoed with remorse and regret, a betrayal not just of our marriage, but of the very essence of trust. My emotions exploded in a torrent. Anger, sorrow, and disbelief mingled into a cacophony that threatened to overwhelm me. "How could you do this?" I cried, my voice hoarse with anguish. "How could you betray me by turning to the one person I trusted to help you heal?" The room was filled with a heavy silence, punctuated only by the sound of our ragged breathing. In that moment, I felt utterly alone, isolated by a betrayal so profound that it left no room for reconciliation. The confrontation spiraled into an emotional collision. I recounted memories of our happier days, contrasting them with the stark reality of deception. I demanded to know if there had ever been a moment when our love had faltered, if there had been signs I had missed. Catherine's responses were a mix of regret and anguish, her voice quivering as she tried to explain that the path she had taken was born out of her own internal torment, a torment that I had failed to understand. I realized then that our problems had been deeper than a single act of betrayal. They were the culmination of years of unspoken needs, miscommunication, and emotional distance. Yet, even as the raw pain of the confrontation consumed us both, a part of me longed for answers, and perhaps even a glimmer of redemption. I saw in Catherine's tear-streaked face the desperate wish to undo the damage, to find a way back to the love we once shared. But I also recognized that trust, once broken so thoroughly, might never be fully restored. In that moment of collision, I was forced to face a painful truth. Our marriage would never be the same, and the road ahead would be paved with uncertainty, regret, and the long, arduous process of healing. The confrontation ended with no miraculous reconciliation, only a somber agreement to face the fallout together, each of us burdened with the weight of our actions. As I left the study that day, my heart felt heavy with the realization that the foundation of our love had been irreparably damaged. The betrayal had ripped apart the very fabric of our shared life, leaving behind a tapestry woven with threads of sorrow, anger, and the faint, desperate hope that someday, somehow, we might rebuild what had been lost. In the aftermath of that fateful confrontation, our lives took on the character of a long, uncertain journey. The once familiar contours of our home became a landscape of memories, both cherished and painful. Every corner, every quiet moment, reminded me of the bond we had once shared and the betrayal that had shattered it. The days that followed were marked by silence, introspection, and an overwhelming need for clarity. I knew that if there was any chance for redemption, it would begin with confronting the pain head-on. I sought solace in solitude, poring over memories of happier times while trying to reconcile them with the harsh reality of our present. I began attending therapy myself, desperate to understand not only Catherine's actions but also the shortcomings within our relationship that had allowed this betrayal to take root. In those sessions, I confronted my own vulnerabilities, the ways I had perhaps failed to recognize the silent pleas for attention and understanding that had gone unnoticed. Each session was a step toward healing, a painstaking process of accepting that sometimes love isn't enough to shield us from the inevitable fractures that life can bring. Catherine, burdened by guilt and regret, likewise embarked on her own journey of self-reflection. She continued her sessions with Dr. Adams, though the dynamics of that relationship had changed irreversibly. Her path was one of painful introspection and accountability. In quiet moments, we would share fragments of our thoughts, tentative conversations that hinted at a desire to rebuild the trust that had been so thoroughly eroded. Yet, every step forward was accompanied by the lingering shadow of betrayal, a reminder that the wound was deep and would not heal overnight. Together, we began to re-examine our past, the shared dreams, the promises made in moments of hope, and the gradual drift into isolation. We talked about the unmet needs, the silences that had grown between us, and the ways in which our individual pain had driven us apart. These conversations were raw and unfiltered, filled with both anger and sorrow, but they were also the first tentative steps toward understanding. I realized that forgiveness, if it were ever to be granted, would have to be a slow, deliberate process, a mosaic of small reconciliations pieced together over time. The path to healing was fraught with setbacks. There were nights when the memories of betrayal surged up unbidden, when the pain of Catherine's deception felt as fresh as the day I discovered it. I would lie awake, haunted by the sound of her whispered confessions in the dark, and the overwhelming sense of loss that no amount of time could erase. Yet, in those moments of despair, I clung to the hope that the human spirit is resilient, that even the deepest wounds can eventually give way to renewal. I began to redefine what it meant to rebuild our life. It wasn't about erasing the past or pretending that nothing had happened. Instead, it was about accepting the scars as a part of our shared journey and learning to move forward with compassion and honesty. I found solace in small acts, a quiet conversation over coffee, a shared walk in the crisp morning air, the simple act of looking into each other's eyes without fear. Slowly, we began to forge a new path, one that acknowledged our pain while also holding the possibility of a future built on hard-won trust. As I write these words, I know that our journey is far from over. The betrayal that once threatened to tear us apart has left an indelible mark on both our souls. Yet, amid the darkness, I see the faint glimmer of redemption, a fragile hope that the love we once cherished might someday be reborn, tempered by the lessons of our past. Our story, marked by a double life of vengeance and the painful collision of emotions, serves as a reminder that even in the face of the most profound betrayal, there exists the possibility for growth, understanding, and, ultimately, forgiveness. The road ahead will be long, and the memories of that fateful year will forever linger in the corners of our hearts. But with each day that passes, as we strive to rebuild our lives, we learn that redemption is not a destination but a continuous journey, a series of small steps taken together, even when the path is shrouded in uncertainty. And so, as I look toward the future, I hold on to the hope that our shared pain may one day transform into a deeper, more resilient bond, a testament to the enduring power of love and the human capacity for renewal.